Okay. Okay, yes, now it works. Can someone check on Facebook?
I'm doing it.
It says video connecting on the Facebook site. I went live and I start the video.
Brilliant.
Okay. How are you doing today, guys?
Hello, everyone. Very good.
Hopefully this shall work now.
Right. Good evening, everyone. How are we? Look at that. Berhard managed to get the gist of it straight away.
So I'm wearing the mask and can smoke my pipe.
At the same time?
Yeah.
That's absolutely gorgeous. That's a good way to do it. Well, it's so good to see you all. Brilliant to see you all, especially Steve, who's in a totally different time zone. Brilliant. If anyone wonders why we got these little masks, the people of Kavalan and King Car, the company, they sent all of us these masks to protect us from the virus, and it's a really, really lovely gesture, which is, well, we're ever so grateful for that. It's really nice, and they sent me about 50 of them. So I don't know about you guys, but I distributed between friends and family, and everyone is very grateful. And
absolutely,
thank you so much.
Where did yesterday the first time?
I went into a pub where the personal can use it. The people working there. Yeah, it's the pub of my girlfriend, to be honest.
Brilliant.
Came at a really good time in California because we couldn't get them at all.
I know.
Anyway, so
well, absolutely. It was a shortage here.
They're very good. They're very, very practical, and they work. That's good.
Absolutely. And we had a shortage over here. I think in Germany it was the same. You couldn't get hold of them, so it was very welcome. And again, thanks very much to our friends in Taiwan for helping us in the crisis times. But great that you're all here. We are gathering for the first time, and I want to say we are really sorry. We tried out in the afternoon how it works with the stream. Possibly that were the problem, because the stream keys scrambled and it doesn't go through. So we are on now, and hopefully everyone can see us. Kavalan, we talked a lot, and I mean, Berhard, obviously you've been there more than me. I've been there twice now. How many times have you been there, Berhard?
4, I think, or 5. I can't remember.
You love to travel, don't you? I love it.
Of course, we love all to travel.
Yeah, it was
like
nice.
we all love to travel. We've done it with each other quite a bit.
My first visit was with there was a kind of talk in front of 150 of the best customers, and Ian Buxton was there as well, and we gave a lecture. This was quite funny.
Fantastic.
We're jumping right in how we came across Kavalan, but first of all, maybe short introduction of each of us, or do you think we don't need it? Please, Berhard, introduce yourself.
Hey, my name is Berhard. I'm from Germany. I have a little collection of bottles behind me. I'm sampling spirits on a professional basis since '97. I run a bar before that as general manager, cocktail bar. I'm writing about spirits, wrote some books on whiskey, on gin, on rum, this thing, giving lectures.
Okay. Next one, Steve.
I'm Steve Beal, San Francisco. Been in the whiskey business about 25 years. I know all these guys because we've judged together at many international competitions, like the International Wine and Spirits competition. Some of us have been to India together and various other places. So it's a great opportunity to get together.
Thanks very much.
I suppose it's
Mr.
my
Gorn.
turn. I'm Toby for friends common. Everyone keeps calling me Tobias, very serious. So I'm Toby. I worked with wine, spirits and cigars for about 15 years now. And as Steve said before, and Berhard, we tend to travel a lot together and judge at international competition. I also work with the IWSC time to time as one of the panel chairs, so as you guys, and we tend to write and evaluate drinks a lot. I'm also a cigar writer, so hence the cigar and sitting outside with the sheep just behind me.
Ooh, what are you smoking there?
This is the Davidoff late hour Sir Winston Churchill. This is actually aged, some of the tobacco is aged in whiskey casks. Scotch whiskey this time, not Kavalan, but hey.
Send one over.
I would love to send you one.
Line.
And the story how it came up before Arthur introduces himself, because we meant to be going to Kavalan with Steve. That's going to be our next trip, which got postponed twice now because of this virus, horrible nonsense. Hopefully it will all clear out and we may be able to go soon. I'm really looking forward to that. And also the generosity of Kavalan and King Card is brilliant, including these. These are very, very thoughtful, really thoughtful. Arthur, how about you?
Well, my name is Arthur. I'm originally from Austria. I have my office in Switzerland. So at the moment I'm in Switzerland. I'm a spirits expert, drinks expert. And my first visit to Kavalan was obviously together with my friend Berhard, when we've been in Taiwan for the Concours Mondial Brussels, which happened the spirit selection happened the first time in Taiwan in 2013, if I remember right. That's how we met Distillery and Ian Cheng. And from there onwards, we crossed quite a lot. So how did you guys came across Kavalan the first time? I mean, we obviously have been there in 2013. Berhard, you do some jobs for them as a expert and ambassador, if we may call it. How did you get in touch with them in Germany?
Well, I got in touch with them, I think it was 2010 in Taiwan, and then they later on approached me here in Germany because they have an office here in Düsseldorf. I mean, they're selling also their coffee in Germany, not only the whiskey.
Yeah, Mr. Brown
was the first product, in fact. And this was how it came. And they invited me to give a lecture in front of their audience, their customers. So this was my first meeting with them. It was very interesting, especially the evening in the distillery. After the visit of the distillery, we had a little lunch in a bar or restaurant with people who were working there. And somebody thought he must compete with me on drinking beer.
Ooh, really? Who was that?
And then officially there was no more beer in the pub then.
So that was how you introduced yourself.
I won the competition.
Well, that was quite clear.
Brilliant.
Steve.
So my first experience was sitting as a judge on a panel in an international competition, which I'm not going to name. And the single malts were not identified by their countries of origin. So there were a number of Scottish single malts, some Irish single malts, some various other things, and of course, Japanese. And then there was something from Taiwan, actually a couple of things from Taiwan, but we, the judges, did not know. And we were all commenting on how good these were. They're all going to get some sort of recognition, maybe a medal or two. And certainly this particular one is really stunning. And everybody said, well, what part of Scotland do you think that came from? And of course, after it was all over and we'd given all the medals and went in to see who won, it turned out to be a Kavalan. And very pleased. And I'd never heard of it at that point. And that would be pretty unusual for me because I've probably tasted 10,000 whiskeys in my career. So anyway, really pleased and always looking forward to meeting it again and seeing it again. And as the years have gone by, really stunning how well they're doing and how well they're received. And, lots of eyebrows get raised around the whiskey community.
Okay.
10 years ago, who'd heard of whiskey from Taiwan? Does
Absolutely.
it have a snake in the bottle or something? It was always very kind of exotic. But now
may I ask quite something? I mean, we are going to talk for the next 40 minutes or 50 minutes about Taiwan and Kavalan. Do we all agree? And I hope the US is not listening. Taiwan is a country on its own, because when we've been in China last summer, our friend Dominic Roscrow has been asked by the press about Chinese whiskey, and said, well, I'm not aware of a Chinese whiskey, but there is some great stuff in Taiwan, which obviously was not the was not the right answer. So
it's lucky he's not in jail.
We agree to not agree. Is that the thing we go forward?
It's a minefield, politics, Taiwan and mainland China.
And it might become even some more minefields, what you hear from the press. So I think we are not going to give a clear...
I'd just like to give a shout out to my old classmates at Jinji Dashue, the National Chinese University in Taiwan, where I was a student 50 years ago. So, 中华民国万岁.
Great. I didn't understand it, but it sounded great. Toby,
good.
What about you? How did you came across Kavalan?
I just sat next to Ian on a bus, basically. Okay, that's the real story is that I was aware of Kavalan and I had some bottles and some amazing tastings. But one day I was going down to Guildford when they pick us up, the IWC pick us up with this shuttle bus thing. And obviously, it's early in the morning, traveling, still on the phone, trying to do emails and that sort of stuff. And I just look up like, oh, who's this guy? Like, oh, blimey, it's Ian Chang, brilliant. And we had a lovely chat, and ever since we are friends, I have a lot of respect for Ian, what he's doing. And Kavalan was always one of those whiskeys for me, because I like a good cigar, or a pipe sometimes. And hang on, are you lagging? Yeah. And it's a new classic. I think it's an iconic whiskey on its own right, and especially researching how the distillery was built and everything is just such a success story.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we are talking history here, and one person that knows history even a little bit more intense, because he's been part of it, is a dear friend of us. I mean, Berhard was the first one to work with and for them in Germany when I met them in Germany as well. And they looked actively for an importer to Switzerland. And I think the first guest knows quite a lot about how hard it is to import something new. You all know him. I'd like to invite our friend Marcel Telser. He's from Liechtenstein. And Marcel was the first sole importer of Kavalan in Switzerland years ago. Hello, Marcel.
Hello all together. How are you?
Hello, Marcel.
We're pretty fine. We don't have such fancy pot stills in back of us, but tell us.
Yes, I'm in the distillery. It's still standing. But how it came to Kavalan and the import to Switzerland was quite a funny story, because I was actually not looking out for being importer of Taiwanese whiskey. But I was approached then at the time by Kavalan, by our well-known girls, by Jana Schäfer and Sylvia Engelhardt, if I would not give it a try. and this was in 2013 or 14, quite a time ago. And I said yes. So I ordered. I got the first delivery in an urgency for the whiskey ship in Zurich. Well, we gave it a try. It was very interesting at the time being, because Scotch whiskey was, I would say, at the peak of interest at the time, in Switzerland at least. And we came up there with Kavalan, and of course, some of the guys knew Kavalan because it went around the press through the Whiskey Bible and IWSC, and it had some track already, but it was not really known, and people did not really know what it was tasting like. So what they did is, well, they approached the stand. Asked what it is. First of all, they had a look at the classic bottles. You can remember those; they're still available. The classic at the Concert Master, which come in this very Asian style bottle, and well, that was not very inviting to give confidence to the product. But still. The main interest at the first stage was merely on the podium, which was really attractive to many persons. We sold it really well. And of course, at the time, we had also the bourbon, Solist bourbon, and the Solist sherry, which were the main attractions at the time for the Scotch connoisseur, I want to say. And well, people always were very surprised by its quality, by its purity of taste. I mean, there are many good whiskies out in the world. You know it better than me. But what was the key driver in the interest in selling Kavalan whiskey was the clearness of the taste. If it was a bourbon Solist, it really was the bourbon Solist, and so like the sherry. Another product jumped then in, which was quite some innovation on the market. It was the Vinho Barrique, which was only available in small quantities, but this was the most researched product at the time. We really had to put in limit ourselves in selling this. So we did a lot of tasting, we did a lot of publicity, and it exploded. It really exploded. For those who don't know, but Switzerland is one of the countries that has a little bit more money to spend on luxury goods, and we really performed there very well. We had a rocket launch, and I think we even 2 years later sold more than Austria and Germany together.
Okay, so that sounds like a rough but a good start, a rocket start, like you say. How was the perception of the people for the new product?
Well, they were very curious at the time, so they wanted to try, and they spent really a long time in front of the bottles and went through all products more or less, and it was driven really by the fact that they were surprised by the quality. I mean, Kavalan is no age statement whiskey, and if people have asked what's the age of this whiskey, which was at this time still a considerable point for assuming quality, well, we said we don't know exactly, but between let's say 4 and probably 7 years, but not more than that. And that led then to all this specifica what Kavalan had to offer in regard to water maturation, cask management, and so on. And this was very convincing. I think the big point where Kavalan succeeded much better than very much others was the cask management and the cask preparation.
Okay. I see you standing in front of the stills, and I have to tell you all, guys, I'm very, very sorry. We talked for 10 minutes and no one could see us. I show you again the pictures from Kavalan from last year, and then we can pick up from there and talk a little bit about style and techniques. Is that okay for you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so sorry for the technical problems we had. Hopefully we can solve this now. Okay, well, some impressions from December 2019, and Marcel, you already said it's a no-age stated whiskey. Berhard, we together have been down there. Would you all agree that we saw climate is quite almost tropical, palms around, high temperatures? That is one of the key influences why it's a no-age stated and a key influence on the style of the whiskey.
This tropical climate, what they have to face is an advantage and a disadvantage at the same time. I mean, the advantage is obviously that you can produce a very good whiskey in a short time. The disadvantage is that you are forced to sell it, because if a Kavalan will, at the moment, to my knowledge, became, let's say, 10 years old, it's done. It's too woody. So you have a strong influence in that case, and so they also have to face the problem that they have an angel share of, let's say, between 10 and 15%, depending where it is on the warehouse. So this is also a factor which has to be taken into account.
Absolutely.
And I mean,
yeah, carry on.
These standard whiskies, or the key whiskies in this product range, are comparably young by age, but if you taste them, you cannot feel that. So if it's a blind tasting and you have a Kavalan Solis series, it's something, especially the sherry ones. I mean, this is something like a whiskey from Scotland at the age of 20, 25, 30.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw the still house. We saw more than one still house in the pictures. Actually, it was 3 different still houses. Some of you might know, the other ones might not know, that Kavalan originally started with German distilling techniques with pot stills from Holstein, which is a hybrid still compared to the pot stills from Scotland that were introduced later. It's almost the same technique than Marcel is standing in front. Having pros and cons, I mean, Marcel mentioned before, it was a very clean and very balanced product. And I think quite some of that may be introduced by the technique of the stills. What do you think about that, Marcel and the others?
Well, if I may start on this issue, I think well, there are 2 approaches always how to deal with this particular issue, making whiskey. What in the case of Kavalan, what they did very well is take care of commercial aspects. You know, for example, they have a flavor profile which is, well, as Berhard just confirmed, it is a Scotch taste flavor whiskey, and this was distilled, as we know, on the Forsyth stills. So the Forsyth stills, of course, they are very traditional, whiskey only distilling equipment, which is proven to be good and brings out the flavor that consumer would expect. Now it's a very rugged technique. I mean, distills from a technological point of view, they date back the 19th century. If you are looking at well, today they have some electronic equipment as well, of course. But if you look at Holstein, a German engineered still, that's a completely different thing. You don't have to explain a German what the engineering is. So they did not stand still and just keep traditions, which has, of course, an impact on many things, especially when it comes to producing whiskies. You have to know very much how you can deal with the machine that it turns out right.
Well, it's not only with whiskey. You always need to know your stuff. May I shift the questions towards the other as well? Steve, do you think there is any impact through that original German techniques, or is it now all up to the Scots technology?
Well, I think to me, the Taiwanese, like the Scots, have been really big in innovation over the years. They've really had to because of the situation the country's in. And I remember as a student there, the Taiwanese are great Scotch whiskey drinkers, but they were also great recyclers, reusers. And you've got all of your local Taiwanese rice wine served to you in recycled Johnny Walker bottles.
Oh, brilliant.
And it's quite funny. I'd go to a big banquet with one of my best friends whose dad ran the Taiwan Cement Company, and they had a Lazy Susan in the middle of the table, and the bottle would come around between each course. And the Taiwanese would take the one without the label, and they would pour the Johnny Walker Red Label for me, because being obviously from the West, they would think that I would want the Scotch. And I don't remember how some of these dinners actually ended, but I do remember that the Taiwanese always rise to the occasion and use what they have available and adapt and adapt and adapt. And so what I've noticed with Kavalan, for example, is they've adapted not only making the whiskey, distilling it, but how they age it. And I'd love us to kind of sort of pivot over to that, because their wood management, because of their short maturation cycles and their very clever use of their casks, conditioning of the casks and charring of the casks and preparing them for these short maturation cycles, have led to some really creative liquid, which I think is part of what the whole thing, like Marcel said, people were not so much concerned about the age anymore. If the stuff tastes right, it doesn't matter how old it is. And I think mixing the tropical climate with great distillation and great use of the wood has been, kind of magical for them.
Outstanding. Guys, I'm sorry, I have a couple of questions from our Facebook live stream. One is Ian Russell, very valid question. Do they rotate the barrels around the warehouse? Do we know that? No.
No, they don't.
Absolutely. I heard they did in the beginning, but they're definitely not doing it nowadays. Yep. The other valid question, my friend, we got asked what we are drinking here.
Whiskey.
It's whiskey. It's Taiwanese whiskey. I mean, I poured myself the classic Kavalan, or Kavalan Classic, their main malt, and I see the brother or the sister of it is standing in front of our friend Toby, which is the concert master with the port cask finish.
Beautiful.
I have a podium.
You get a podium. We get some more exciting stuff coming up. Maybe we talk about the products a little bit later. I mean, we discussed now how techniques and styles come into Kavalan. And I know we said we will have a special guest, and Marcel, you're our first very special guest. Good that you're with us. We have a second guest, And shall we get him in?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Of course.
Ta-da!
And I say
It's very,
hello.
very early. It's very, very early in the morning. But hello, our friend Ian. How are you this morning?
Hey,
Brilliant.
Good to see
I'm
you.
fine.
Wow.
How are you? How are you, Arthur? Hello,
I think
Bernard.
we are
Hello,
all fine.
Steve.
We
Marcel
are
and
all
Toby.
prepared to go to bed. You
Can you
just
hear
get
me?
up.
We can hear you loud and clear. Good.
We
That's
can
right.
hear you.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Yes,
Ian, you watched us.
it's
I saw you watched us.
3:42 here.
Oh, that's really early.
Yes,
We-
I had some technical problems early on, but it's all solved now.
Well, it was us having problems. We had a technical trial in the afternoon, and Facebook renewed the streaming IDs, so we had to set it up completely new. Sorry for that issue,
see.
friends.
Okay.
You
No
heard us.
problem. No problem.
You heard the different opinions.
Yes,
Are
yes,
we
I
all
can hear you.
totally wrong?
You're looking good,
No.
Ian.
Everything
What a
is
pleasure to see you.
everything's correct so far.
Everything's correct so far. So
Yeah.
we wanted to ask you. I mean, the most of
Yeah.
us heard you
Mhm.
left Kavalan. That's why I stayed
Yes.
former master blender Kavalan. Looking back to those years,
That's right.
share some stories with us. How was the beginning? What about the cask management? What about change of technology? I give you the lead, you talk. I have a look at the questions coming in.
Okay.
And whenever you stop talking, I take over
Okay.
again.
Right. Okay. So I joined Kavalan. That was almost 16 years ago. When I was a young man,
Oh, come on.
and so for the past 16 years, it was it was very, very exciting because as what we have talked about just now, it's all about creating whiskey in a hot climate. So Dr. Jim Swan and I, we tried our best to produce single malt whiskey from a hot climate. And I always when I was used to talk to Jim Swan, I always describe it as similar to my favorite car in the world, which is Porsche. Porsche 911, the engine is at the back, which is unprecedented. And people used to say that when you put engine at the back of the car is very easy to slide when you drive fast, especially during corner, when you corner. And it was very dangerous. But with with technology, I think Porsche has managed to make sure that even though it's a rear engine sports car, but it's safe and also it's very agile. So by producing whiskey in the heat, what we have to be very careful is not to over mature, as what Berhard described just now. You have to be very careful to prevent the woody character, the over woody character, and also the over matured quality, which means you lose the balance. So for the past 16 years, Jim and I think we have. I always say that we laid down very good foundation for Kavalan. So I think for many more years to go, Kavalan, just like my own kids, I would like to see it to become stronger, healthier, and also very successful into the many more years to come.
Okay, so thank you very much for this. Listening to you, hopefully I haven't missed something.
Thank you.
Is that mainly it's the cask management and the influence of the climate that is one of the biggest influences on the style of Kavalan, is it?
That's right. So because of the hot climate, we have to try to avoid using too much European wood, because European oak will give us too much astringency in terms of tannins and so on. So at Kavalan, we always specify to our suppliers of our casks that the wood has to be mostly American oak, so that we can manage to avoid the astringency, and also to maintain that natural sweetness, which I think is very much sought after by consumers.
Okay. I mean, that leads to a question from Ian Russell,
Sure.
who asks, the variety of casks seems greater than almost any other distillery. How do they decide what to use?
So basically, what we do, I mean, what I used to do at Kavalan was we used to buy as many types of casks as possible. So
Okay.
when I used to travel with Jim, we used to buy many different casks, like port, sherry, and so on. So we then experiment. So far, all the types of casks that we use, they turn out to be quite good. So no big disasters yet. Fingers crossed. So that's something we we hope that the tradition can continue into the future.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ian, before I pass on to the
Yes.
others, one question. I mean, you started
Sure.
with Holstein stills and later on
Yes.
changed into the Scottish equipment. Can you describe us what was the main difference between those distillates, and why did you change at all?
Okay, so to be honest, we actually started with Forsyth first.
Okay.
That was in 2006. So 6, 7, and 2008. For 3 years, we used Forsyth pot stills. But starting from 2008 and 2009 and 2010, for another additional 3 years, we decided to try the German Holstein stills. So the main difference, I would say, between these two types of stills is that Holstein, I think it gives better reflux or rectification during distillation. So the new make quality is good, but perhaps a little bit lighter. So one might say that you have to control the plates, the plates on Holstein stills. But we actually tried that. With Jim, we opened all the plates on our Holstein stills to mimic the pot still type of space, in terms of the space above the pot. But that didn't really help a lot. So that's why in the end we decided to switch back to Forsyth pot stills in order to obtain that heavier type of spirit.
Okay.
And
well,
we then decided to use the Holstein stills for gins.
Well, one might say now Kavalan isn't that heavy at all. It's more a mild, classic malt whiskey style. But one question I just saw on Facebook coming in, I think that's a very good question. With the effect of climate on maturation, was this a consideration when deciding cutting points?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Was the climate?
Yes, because of the heat, our cut points, there was specifically designed for, to suit the heat, which meant right from the beginning we make sure that the new make is clean and fruity, because with the heat, we cannot afford to mature the whiskey for too long. There is always a specific length of maturation for each type of cask, and the smaller the cask, the shorter the maturation. So that's why back in 2006, Jim designed the cup points for Kavalan to give that clean, complex, and fragrant character of our new make. Of the new make of Kavalan.
Okay, thanks very much for that.
All try the new make.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't speak for the other ones. Toby, you got a question?
There's another question here, which is quite funny. So compared to Macallan and Glenmorangie, how's the shape compared to the pot stills that you use? Obviously, a Glenmorangie and Macallan are very different size and shape stills. So what is the shape of the stills actually, basically? What would you compare it to, if you have to, obviously?
So I think the shape of the stills of Kavalan is what consumers would call lantern type of pot stills. And some consumers, I know, they say that the shapes looks similar to Glenlivet. Yeah, so personally, I would describe it as lantern.
Lantern shape. Brilliant, thank you. There's another question here. Arthur, if you don't mind, quickly. Has there been any disasters? Any disasters in the distillery? Probably that's the question for. Yeah.
Possibly they won't say.
Yeah, it's no comment. No comment. Look
no
at that.
comment.
No comment.
Berhard is just showing the shape of the pot stills.
Oh yes,
right?
Yes, that's. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's the second distillery.
The new one.
Of Kavalan.
Okay. Very, very quick question to all of you. Starting with Berhard, Steve, Toby, Marcel, and then back to you, Ian. We talked. You told us about the style. You said you went for a more full-bodied style. Compared to these cuts, I would say it's a medium intensity of unpeated malt. What do you guys, and please Ian last, because you're the guy who knows everything. What is, in your opinion, the Kavalan whiskey describing best the house style of Kavalan? In your own opinion, what do you think? Which Kavalan shows the house style of Kavalan best?
I think it's by far showing the house style is the ex-bourbon, not the softest ex-bourbon. The regular ex-bourbon is, in my opinion, what is the house style of Kavalan. And if you then use the standard ex-sherry, this adds an additional flavor. But the ex-bourbon is non plus ultra. I think this is a wonderful product.
Okay, so you say it's the ex-bourbon. Steve too, ex-bourbon. What about the others?
It's a funny thing because the ex-bourbon is obviously that's the house style that shows the spirit the best. But why I love Kavalan a lot, because there's such a difference between the different cask and a beautiful cask management there. So obviously a port cask will be very different from the sherry cask. And I'm just trying the Manzanilla here, and it's absolutely brilliant. So you would say it's some sort of nice and fairly reactive cask from Scotland. So you wouldn't say that it is a Taiwanese whiskey or it is a Japanese whiskey. Obviously it's not. You could say it's just a very nice single malt. It's very nice and complex, but quite subtle. I also have the 40th anniversary here. Very kindly, Sandra and the ladies, they sent me some nice samples for my lockdown, and the 40th anniversary King Car is absolutely mind-blowing. a quick story on that. When you're not allowed to say the cask it's from a very famous Bordeaux shutter. Might be the people with the Angel, might be St. Peter's shutter, might be with the Tower. You never know. Ian will never tell us. There was a massive trouble back in the days. I think it was Glenmorangie. Poor Dr. Beal maybe got in trouble for saying the lady's name on the Glenmorangie, and the lady's name shutter said that that's not good because they technically cross-marketing their product. What I would say is, doesn't matter if it's that shutter or this shutter, but it's absolutely gorgeous and it's a fantastic whiskey. But back to the house style, I agree that the bourbon is a great classic. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Marcel?
Well, I agree on what Toby and Berhard said. I think as well that the bourbon is the one that really gives the back of the distillery to a very good extent. But why is that so? In my opinion, it is for the cleanliness of the taste in the positive sense, not in the sense of clean, there is something missing. It is so obvious, well made and straightforward, with the touch of sweetness that it needs. I think these aspects are playing for all Kavalans and giving it the broader house style. Good sweetness, very clear, distinct character of the cask in question. That was for me the absolute point where I had to say, well done, Ian. That is what I haven't seen with many others in this variety.
Okay, I mean, it seems we all agree that the common ex-bourbon is showing the house style at its best. Ian already said they experimented with quite a lot of different casks, and I know there are certain products where you used more than one type of cask to create it. So the next question to all of you is, what do you think, which one is the most complex? Not looking at the price, but which one is the most complex, showing the most influences from different casks?
Vino.
Yeah, sure. Start.
Barrique. Yeah, I
You
think
say
it's, well, although some others have more different barrels in it, but I think the Vino Barrique is one of those whiskies which are first my favorite, besides the port. But this shows the most complexity of different barrels, I think.
Okay.
Now I have to agree with him again. I had the Vino Barrique down when I was down judging the Australian competition earlier in the year, and I took the bottle home with me after the competition and finished it off. I really liked it. I thought it's extremely complex. You can tell it's Kavalan, but it also has all these different kind of nuances as it's sitting in the glass in front of you. And as it begins to oxidize a little bit, the aromas begin to lift and it becomes quite beautiful. So the soloist is really amazing to me.
Toby, having so many bottles in front of you.
It's really hard, to be honest, because I have probably about 20 different Kavalans right now in front of me in little samples of the big bottles. I am an absolute, I'm always biased, but the port cask is always gorgeous. But as you said, the good old Vino Barrique is so complex and so brilliantly just pronounced. And what I wanted to say about Kavalan, it's such a diverse product, obviously, with gorgeous different cask finishes. It has so many different kind of beautiful finishes and flavor profiles. But what always comes through for me is how pronounced and focused it is. If you know what I mean, you always. I mean, obviously, most of these are quite high strengths, and they work how they really balanced. Even I'm drinking right now the 40th anniversary, the King Car, which is a special one. There's only one. The conductor used to bear the King Car name. Otherwise, they're just Kavalan, not just Kavalan. And this is absolutely gorgeous. I had a couple of Kavalan tasting with different whiskey clubs, and the comment was sometimes, quite snarky and not too clever, that, oh, is it really whiskey, or is it some sort of hybrid between the cask? Actually, is it like a port and some whiskey in there, or this time a red wine cask and some whiskey in there? And I always told them that there would be many, many happy master blenders and distillers achieving the same kind of intensity and still balance and complexity using those casks. So it's absolutely magical how it happens. The 40th anniversary, to be honest, with a tiny bit of Rancio and the complexity, is absolutely mind-blowing. It's not a cheap one, unfortunately. It comes in a nice Magnum bottle, which I love. And well, this is my new favorite Kavalan, unfortunately for me, because it's quite rare, I heard.
Yeah, and you really need some luck to get such a bottle.
You like it expensive.
Of course. Look at him. Look at him. Marcel, what's your most complex one?
For me, it's yes, it's as well the Vinio Barrick for
Come on, boys.
It is, yeah, the full point, yes. But I think also especially the Manzanilla cask is one that is just mind-blowing, because this is some kind of product that you rarely see in such a nice done in such a nice way. As well as, well, I don't drink wine, but I like fortified wines and cognac as well. And the cognac cask, or brandy cask, like it's called,
yes,
is also a style that I really appreciate. But that is very personal. It's the Vinio Barrick that is the most complex one. I agree.
So I think we mostly agree to each other, which is, well, not
horrible.
Really a surprise. No, it's not really a surprise. I got a very good question on the Facebook channel. Jörn Kleinhans from the Whiskey Masters asks, if you had to compare the main flavored theme of Kavalan with a Scotch producer, which Scotch does Kavalan come closest in the style and profile? Or is that too far stretched? That analogy too far stretched? And that's a question to all of us. Is there any Scotch you think it is comparable to Kavalan, or shouldn't you do that at all? Which is my opinion, but
I mean, basically all those who emphasize a bit more on the fruity floral side of whiskey. So there's not one, but Kavalan, I think one of the main things in Kavalan is that you always have a fruity tropical note side in them. Scottish whiskey like that. Tamdhu, for example, could be Glengoyne.
Yeah. I mean, first to my mind was Glenmorangie experimenting quite a lot, but it's lighter than Kavalan, I think.
Yeah. Tall stills, yeah.
Yes, Marcel.
I don't know. It's a tricky question, I think. If you have the age in mind, then it gets really difficult. I don't want to say something in this regard. No.
Okay, Steve.
Arthur, it's definitely not Talisker.
No,
brilliant.
Really? No. What about Artbeck?
I have a sample.
Which brings us to a very good point. Steve is next, but I want to throw that question towards Ian if there's maybe some peated stuff coming up. But first, Steve.
Well, I'm quite happy with Kavalan being itself, and I think if you ran it, if it was a horse in a horse race, it would do well against anything in the field, whether you picked the single malt from anywhere, really, whether it was Japanese or Scottish or any of them. But
look at the awards. I mean, it's a horse race winner.
Yeah, they've risen to the occasion in that they've recognized the climate in Taiwan and embraced technology and wood management, which is also environmentally very, very wise, because you can reuse the cask and recondition, repurpose the casks a number of times to make some great whiskeys. They're not afraid of combining different cask styles. So in a way, they are a really horse of a different color, if you will. So it's not really fair. It is a lighter, fruitier style. If people like a lighter, fruitier Scotch, it'll certainly compare very well with that. But I love the fact that it's Taiwanese single malt, and it, for those of you who out there who argue there is no terroir in whiskey, which I think is total BS, it's a really good example of how there is, because this is a unique Taiwanese style whiskey in its own right, a world-class competitor.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well said. Well said. There was a question towards you, Toby. If it's a good idea, no, it's different. Is it a kind of style that could be a cigar's good companion?
Most certainly, and that's probably one of the reasons I have many bottles here. I always say that pairing cigars with whiskey is a fairly complex story. I give you an idea. The Manzanilla is so nice and light, or even the bourbon is even lighter. So it could take a nice Dominican cigar, try any of the Davidoffs, or if you want anything heavier, I'm just coming from a Davidoff tasting actually before you guys. There's a Nicaraguan type of Davidoff, which is brilliant with slightly heavier ones, like a port. And then if you have something really, really heavy, like a Maduro, a really dark cigar, or something really, really punchy, like maybe a heavier Partagas or a Bolivar from Cuba, I would say definitely roll out the big guns. Vinho Barrique, it could be a really exciting choice. So it's because it's such a wide spectrum of flavors and weight, obviously, because if you put it in a heavy Barrique or a port cask, or even the red wine cask with the good old 40th anniversary, it's totally different. But I would say it's definitely a good idea to match it with cigars, and I do it very, very regularly. So, it's a big yes.
Extending that question to Berhard, any recommendations for pipe tobaccos?
The problem is that roundabout for 30 years, I'm smoking the same heavy Latakia English type of tobacco.
I love it.
So
Brilliant.
I cannot give any hints. No.
Okay. No.
And
no way.
The difference between cigar and pipe smokers usually is a pipe smoker, when he has found his tobacco, he does not switch.
Okay.
Yep.
So they have to cope all the whiskeys or cognacs or rums they drink with their tobacco. That's it.
Well, but from Latakia, that's quite bold. It's not far away from the question, will there ever be a peated Kavalan? Ian?
Yes. Right. That's right. Right before I left, we already had one peated expression of Kavalan, which is distillery reserve, which is only available at the distillery. But for the future, they plan to produce more peated whiskey of Kavalan, also with heavier, peaty character in terms of ppm as well. So that is something for the consumers to look forward to.
Okay, great. Do you have the luxury of having a favorite Kavalan, or have you had the luxury of having a favorite Kavalan?
Yes. My favorite Kavalan is used to be the classic, but after that, when I created the Distillery Select, that became my new favorite, because that is even lighter and also more accessible, for anyone. Even if you are a newcomer to whiskey, that is something very approachable, very light, and also fragrant in terms of fruity and floral. And that's why just now I agree with Steve and also Berhard and Toby and Marcel. I think there is no particular Scotch whiskey one can compare Kavalan to. I think Kavalan is a Taiwanese whiskey with its own character, which is passionate, fruity character of the subtropical climate.
Okay. What I would like to do is going into a question round. If any one of you have questions towards Ian, Ian and I, in the beginning or before said, we can ask anything if we want to. He's free not to answer. I mean, he left. Well, that's quite sure. Ian has left Kavalan, and it's a big honor having him on here. Although he's not anymore working for them, he's having his own consultancy company now. He can be hired. So if anyone has any projects, mail towards Ian. But we are not going to ask you what's your future. Is there any new whiskey project? Because if he doesn't want to undisclose it, he will not. So feel free to ask questions in a final round. Berhard, anything you like to shoot towards
Ian? Are you doing well? Are you doing well, Ian? That's my question.
Yes. yes. I'm doing okay. You're looking good, Berhard, and Steve as well. Toby and Marcel.
Well, guys, once we cut off live,
is there any possibility to see you in Europe again?
Yes.
Is there any possibility to see you in Europe?
When are you coming?
Again?
So hopefully by the end of next year, I'll be able to go back to Europe again and to meet the consumers.
Brilliant news. Fantastic.
You're
not allowed to tell why, are you?
Very good answer. That's a very good answer. Guys, you don't have to do this or that. After we cut off from Facebook, you will have the possibility to talk without audience, okay?
Okay.
Steve, any questions towards Ian?
Not so much a question. It's just for about the last decade, I've always spent a week or two with him in the UK. And
yes,
was sorry to hear that none of us will be able to do that this year for a whole variety of reasons. But I know Toby and I are planning to be in Taiwan later this year, and hopefully we can have a dram with you while we're there.
Fingers crossed for you guys.
Okay, yes. I look forward to that, Steve and Toby.
And if I may add to that, because that invite came when you were still there. And thank you so much. Kavalan and yourself, you've been always really kind to us. And hang on, I lost my little face mask, but when they send those little face masks, that was really, really something that it's quite touching, because we had the chat before this with Arthur. Oh, look at that. Brilliant. And I get loads of samples through the industry, and some of them are really nice whiskeys, gorgeous gins, but the care pack of the year was when the Kavalan care pack came with the little sanitizing towels, like little wipes, and these face masks, and they sent about 50. I don't know what they were thinking, that I might have 50 heads, but I shared it with people, and they're all very grateful. So there's a good number of people out there who said thank you, and I want to tell you that, and thank you so much for that.
I very much agree to you, Toby. I have to disagree in one regard. I got a parcel with a little bit of the 40 years old coming in. That was the highlight. Marcel.
Well, Ian, thank you very much that you could join us today. First of all, yes, I would have a question. Yes, a very general one. Put one to me. I mean, we have in today's world, we have many distilleries. We have still a growing sector. We have production rates which have been dramatically increased over the past 10 years. So we will have a lot of stock in 10 years from now. which will be available to the market. What do you think? How will the world of whiskey be in, let's say, 15 years time, 10, 15 years time? Will there be a significant change? Will there be a change of attitude of consumer? What is your opinion in this regard?
I think perhaps in 10 or 15 years time, definitely more producers coming from all corners of the world. For example, for what I know, so far, there will be 14 or 15 more producers from Japan along. So I think like all of us here today, we all have the passion for whiskey. And personally, I would really like to see, perhaps in 10 or 15 years, we have at least 5 producers from Taiwan, representing the Taiwanese whiskey industry, just like what people in Scotland do for Scotch whiskey and whiskey from Switzerland and so on. So personally, I would really love to see more producers. But in terms of drinking behavior, I think it should be the same, except you drink more in the future. So you have to train your liver as well.
Brilliant.
And if you want to train your liver well, you come to Taiwan and have dinner with Mr. Lee of Kavalan.
Thank you.
He will help you to train your liver well.
Yes, I know.
Well, I had the pleasure having lunch with him, so
Steve,
I can't agree.
Steve and Toby.
We're definitely watching out for Mr. Lee. This great character. Can't wait to meet him.
Yeah, I think
it'll be fantastic.
I think Steve and Toby, you will experience that when you come later this year.
I'm already training very hard here, as
Toby.
you can see. I'm watching it. I'm watching it. Definitely training up. No problem. It's going to be such a good thing. But Ian, just obviously because you don't work with Kavalan anymore,
sure.
We must come and sneak out to see you, because there's no way if I'm coming to Taiwan and not seeing you.
Okay, I mean, I think this is it. We run for an hour and 8 minutes. If there are no more questions from us to Ian or from Ian to the rest of the world, any announcements, I think we are going to cut off here. We all have a glass to cheer towards Ian. It was a great pleasure, gentlemen, having you all with me tonight. Friends out there, you see the ticker. There is a Facebook page of Spirit Expert Friends. Steve said we might do this again. That actually he said that before we ran into technical difficulties, but we might be back with another topic with other guests, and we're going to see you all out there now that we can tour again on the road. Thank you very, very much, and cheers towards Ian.
Thanks very much
for joining us.
Cheers. Cheers, guys.
Yes.
Cheers.
Good health, Ian. Thank you.
It's too early for me to have a drum.
That's okay. Stay on. Cheers. And thanks very much for watching us. Cheers. Sorry for the technical issues, and hope to see you next time again. Thank you very much from all of us to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Cheers. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Okay, we are out. All fine now. Thanks very much. You done your utmost. Marcel is gone, or Marcel?
Yes, I think Marcel.
It always clicker sounds and delays.
Yeah, Liechtenstein is quite bad with technical things.
It's like
so
a little
I hope we are not